It is 10 a.m. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. The Nashville Predators were down 4-1 at the start of the third period, but rallied to win in overtime over the Vegas Golden Knights 5-4 with a game-winning goal from Roman Josi in the extra period. It extends the franchise record point streak to 18 games. The Preds hit the road this week, starting at the Coyotes tomorrow night. In NFL news, the Pittsburgh Steelers have signed 33-year-old Cordero Patterson on a 2-year deal worth $6 million. Patterson reunites with new Steelers offensive coordinator and former Titans play caller Arthur Smith, who was his head coach in Atlanta. Also, free agent cornerback Tre'Davious Wyatt reportedly will sign a 1-year, $8.5 million deal with the Rams. Wyatt was an All-Pro with the Bills in 2019. Tennessee football Austin Price of VolQuest reported this morning that Tennessee running back Cam Seldon will miss the remainder of spring practice with a shoulder injury. The Vols play their spring game on April 13th. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Back. Well, 104.5 The Zone. Hope you had a great time with the substitute teachers. We're happy to be here with you until 1 o'clock. 615-737-1045 is the number. Get in there. Been too long since we've been able to chop it up. Lucas, I appreciate you and Jackson holding it down with a little bit of help from Bert. I hope you guys had fun.
Fun's over, everyone. Back to work.
Well, that's it. Yeah, because that's what my presence here means, is that everybody has to be right back on their game, hard at work. Typically, taskmaster is what I'm known as. Yeah? Hardly. F&M Bank Chat is here for you if you want to interact. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch if you want to. Duck Falling on YouTube says Buck went to California and came back paler. I don't know if that was the case. A lot of fun in Los Angeles. Best wedding of my life, I would argue. Lucas has SEC observations at 10:45. We'll do some wedding observations at 11:45 because I know that's what you're here today for. But in the absence of wedding observations, how about a little bit of Panzica Preds minute? Your Nashville Predators, bud. They have continued the level of success 18-game streak with points so far, culminating in what was, I don't know, can you qualify last night at Bridgestone Arena as the most impressive of the games that they've been in, that they've taken to overtime, that they've ended up winning? This was phenomenal, what they did last night against the Vegas Golden Knights. It was a great way for me to get back into the swing of things. And for those of you who were tweeting me, down 3-0 in the first period, no, I was in fact not at the game last night. So you're welcome. Comeback win 5-4 in overtime. Preds red hot, feeling like, I don't know if it feels more like the President's Cup team or the 2017 team. Either way, I'm looking forward to a fun postseason. I just hope they haven't peaked too early.
Yeah, that's always a tough discussion, the peak too early, because what do you want from them, right?
Oh, no.
They're winning. They're electric. It's the most impressive win of this 18-game point streak. It's the first time in this run that they faced a multi-goal deficit, and it fell over at 4-1 at the end of the second, even though they had a better second period, a terrible first period. But my goodness, that place looked like it was jumping yesterday at Bridgestone Arena, and this team just can do no wrong at the moment.
I so badly want to go to a game, Lucas, but I don't want to endanger the streak. I don't want to. You're going on Monday, next Monday? Have you decided?
I would like to go on Monday.
I think you should go. I think we should test it because the last time I went to a game, you went with me and they lost.
Yeah, but they got a point out of it.
They got a point. They lost, 12 seconds into the overtime period?
They play on Tuesday, by the way. That's their next home game.
Okay.
Tuesday against Boston.
So you're planning on Tuesday. All right, so I think we test this. I think we send you to do some boots on the ground reporting, which means, drunk in the stands somewhere. And then if they come out of that cleanly, then maybe I'll consider going after the fact. I don't want to get too close to the postseason. I want to get it out of the way before the postseason. So if there is some bad luck that I'm bringing, that they can knock that out early and move on with their lives. I feel like that's a safe strategy.
Yeah, I guess the streak needs to be broken before the playoffs if you want to be able to go to playoff games and be at peace with yourself. But they are playing so well right now. Their role players are stepping up. Their star players are stepping up. Roman Josi has to be in the Norris Trophy discussion. Has to be. He has been phenomenal. Philip Forsberg is now 2 goals away from tying a career high. And it really was, that was one of the most entertaining games of hockey of the NHL season.
Oh, by far. By far. They are one of the hottest teams in hockey, if not the hottest team in hockey. And they did it against a quality opponent in Vegas last night because Vegas was on their necks early. And Patera in net was making some crazy saves to make that even more difficult. And ultimately, the Preds used the third period and the overtime to get ahead. And, just the work that they're getting from their top scoring line with Ryan O'Reilly, with Forsberg, with Gustav Nyquist, and then, of course, Roman Josi getting it done in the overtime period. It's just exciting to have a local team succeeding at a high level because I tweeted last night, a little tongue-in-cheek, the hockey team may never lose again. They may never lose again, but it's felt a little, it's felt like some time since a team locally has been this outright dominant. And even if they didn't start the season this way, and the Preds, the NHL and the NBA season is impossibly long, only second in baseball, that they've been able to continue to build and find different ways to win and overcome deficits and not just, run roughshod over their opponents the entire time. I feel like you're seeing the makings of a team that can go deep into April and May. I don't know if this is a Stanley Cup caliber team. I'm not going to pretend like I know that much about the rest of the field in the NHL postseason right now, though you got a pretty good sample size against the Vegas Knights last night. I just know that I'm really excited to have the Preds succeeding at this higher level. I know people locally can't get enough of it, and it's just cool to see Bridgestone Arena have that kind of atmosphere again because it's been a little while. Not that long. I guess we're spoiled. The hockey team is hugely successful. And missing the postseason last year for the first time in, 8 seasons? Yeah, it sucked. Sucked to not have postseason hockey. But we've been pretty spoiled as Preds fans. But this is different, right? This is legitimate hope about a team that can make a little bit of a run. And I don't want to get ahead of myself because, of course, the postseason hockey, as random as anything gets. But I'm really excited. I think Preds fans should be excited. Of course they're excited. I don't know who to give more credit to in terms of the way that this team looks right now. How much does Barry Trotz deserve credit for putting together the young core of this team that is still being supplemented by I want to call them old heads, even though Forsberg's not yet 30, in Forsberg and Josi. How much does Andrew Burnett get credit here for kind of lending himself to that faster pace of attacking play that they talked about as a front office before the season begun? And how much credit do you give David Poile? I don't know what his level of involvement is on day-to-day stuff, but there's no question that this is still the bulk of his team, even though Barry Trotz has taken it over, and that he continues to work in the background to help supplement what looks like a competent front office. It's just a fun time to be a Preds fan.
Trotz has added a catalyst and a star center, speaking of old heads, in Ryan O'Reilly, who at 33 is still playing at a high level, a goal and an assist last night. Your star players are playing, like I said, at an elite level. That goes back to David Poile. And the way Andrew Burnett was kind of able to keep things together, where a little over a month ago, the Preds were not on a good trajectory. We were not thinking about the postseason being that real of a possibility for this team. Oh, my God,
the way they looked at home.
And, yeah, the home form was terrible, and the U2 concert, I guess, was the turning point, or the U2 concert being taken away, because since then they have been absolutely electric. And I'm okay with saying, okay, Stanley Cup contenders. Like, I broached it for the first time yesterday, and after last night, maybe it's recency bias after watching that electric comeback, but like, I'm good with saying it. They're the hottest team in hockey right now, and we're less than a month away from the postseason. So I'm good with saying this team might be able to create something deep enough in the postseason to be considered Cup contenders.
I think the thing, and I'd be curious to know the way that you discussed it prior to the game, because the thing that you mentioned there that gives me the most confidence is Forsberg and Yossi, is the star players playing at an elite level. Because, and I was reading our buddy Alex Doherty in the Tennessean this morning, during this 18-game point streak, Forsberg and Yossi have 24 points for Yossi, including 8 goals. Forsberg has 28 points, including 15 goals. They are playing out of their minds right now. And again, you know, I say the thing about, well, how do you determine whether they've peaked too early or are just performing as well as they can to try and hold on to their wild card spot and potentially advance their postseason fortunes, because they've still got a little bit of time left to make up some ground. But they have both been phenomenal, and I know that Andrew Burnett could not say enough about Roman Josi last night, who echoed your sentiments, Lucas, saying that he is the best defenseman in the league.
Only 7 teams in the NHL have more wins than the Preds right now. And what Kevin Lankinen and UC Saros have been doing over the course of the last month is tops the league. I don't know how that number would have changed, but before last night, they led the league in combined save percentage over this 17, now 18-game stretch. And you should expect to be able to extend that point streak to 19 tomorrow in Arizona against a terrible team. Then you go to Colorado, which is tough. Then you come back home to host the Bruins. So they start to play playoff teams again after tomorrow against the Coyotes. And I just want to see how long they can extend this thing. They broke this record like a week ago. So
yeah.
how much more can they put? Can they get it over 20? Can they get it over 20 games?
Well, that they're scoring themselves out of the holes that they might dig early on, the way that they did in this game. And they've done it a couple of different times, right?
No, they haven't been digging holes, though, in this run. That's the thing. When it's 3-0 in the first, you kind of felt like, all right, now they're paying for the 17-game point streak, because they hadn't faced many deficits in that streak. They'd really been handling their business. So this was the first time in these 18 games that they've had to kind of climb out of a terrible first period, climb out of a multi-goal deficit, and come back and win and have to outscore the opponent.
Well, that they scored, and then Vegas immediately answered to put them down 4-1, and that's when the run began. That's the kind of stuff, and there's no way to quantify a team's mindset or how much they're motivated by a situation like that, or how easy it is, or how easy it would be for many of us to just kind of be like, all right, whatever, on to the next night. We'll try to do it against Arizona here in a couple of days. No, that they're still out there fighting for it is the thing that makes you feel the most confident. I didn't think I'd come back from vacation and open with 12 minutes of hockey talk in a week where the Titans traded for one of the best corners in the league, but here we are. 615-737-1045 is the number. There was also some NFL rule changes that came out of owners' meetings this week while I've been absent. We'll get into those coming up next. And the idea is the NFL changing for the better or the worse. We can talk about that. 615-737-1045 is the number. Good to be back on this Wednesday. I'm Buck Rising. It's 1045 The Zone. Welcome back on this Wednesday morning. We got some rules coming out of the NFL owners' meetings that have had a little tinkering done to them. I could listen to this all day, though, Lucas. This is Sierra Farrell. You went to the Wednesday night show at the Ryman. I went to the Thursday night show before I left for vacation. She was absolutely electric. Everything's just better at the Ryman anyway. And I know, but nobody's here for my musical opinions and stuff like that. But I don't go to enough Ryman shows. I've been here 9 years almost. I haven't been to nearly enough Ryman shows. That was an absolute electric factory.
Perfect for that venue, Sierra Farrell.
Absolutely. New album out, by the way. Maybe we'll hear some more throughout the course of the day. Either way, rule changes. What's in, what's out. Hip drop tackle, out. So, any player who gets busted committing a hip drop tackle, as the NFL defines it, gets a 15-yard penalty, and the offense gets an automatic first down. Are we in or out on the out that the hip drop tackle is now?
I feel like I've come around on it. At first, when I saw that video from Tom Pelissero, did you see what I'm talking about? From the press conference at NFL owners meetings.
Oh, yeah, where there's an executive walking people from the league through how this rule is now going to be adjudicated.
Yeah, just showing examples of it.
Yeah.
And most of the examples he showed, including Ryan Tannehill, by the way, his ankle injury in London against Baltimore, most of those led to injuries. But I was watching that video, and I was just seeing a bunch of tackles,
yep.
Right? But I've heard some former players speak on it, too. I've seen Keith Bullock talking about it. And I don't know. It seems like a lot of players are split on this, where there's current players taking to Twitter talking about might as well play flag football. And there's some former players like Keith Bullock saying, yeah, this is never how I was taught to tackle. And it's also, there's a misconception about what is actually being ruled on here, where it's not just a hip drop tackle. It's a certain way to kind of launch yourself and swivel your body around weightlessly onto the opponent's legs. Like, you can still tackle somebody and land on top of them without it being a penalty, but it is going to lead to some very nebulous and frustrating flags that are going to have big impacts on games, like any new rule.
Sure. Here's my position, okay? My initial reaction was to say, like J.J. Watt did, just put the flags on them, you know? Just let's go out there, let's play flag football, let's get on with our day. Now, Delaney Walker maintains that his career was ended by this. And Delaney was also up there in age and was not, nearly the same player that he was at the end of his career that he was during his best years here for the Titans. But there is no question that Delaney, after he sustained that injury, had all manner of issues trying to play football again. You've had several different players, offensive players, come out and talk about this, how dangerous it is. Gronk's retirement is contributed or is basically, I don't want to say forced, around the idea that he was tired of getting hit in the legs this way, because there's no other way to take down Gronk in terms of how the NFL officiates this stuff. So you got to go low on these tight ends and receivers. The issue with the hip drop tackle is that it is definitely something that's taught, the form of it. It's effective. And the injury rate, where they're seeing an increase between 20 and 25% times higher than that of what they would define as a standard tackle. And that's not just me throwing a number out there. That's what the NFL leaders determined, that the injury rate is about 25 times higher than that of a standard tackle when you're committing a quote-unquote hip drop tackle. It's tough for me to be an advocate for player safety and then just throw my hands up in the air and be like, but the hip drop tackle, flag football, garbage. I can't do that in the same sentence and not be hypocritical. So I'm probably pro throwing the hip drop tackle out, even though I'm begrudgingly pro, if that makes any sense. And I think that most people would probably take that position. You acknowledge the danger. You acknowledge that there is a significant spike in the injury rate around this particular tackle, and that while it may not be the easiest thing in the world for a defender to make a stop now, it hadn't been for a while, and you're just kind of, this is the way that the game is progressing. The question is, does it drastically change your viewing experience? Because that I think is at the core of if you want to actually have a gripe with it, does it fundamentally alter football? My position is no. The hip drop tackle does not outright alter football in the way that I think, including myself, a lot of people would have had the reaction, well, they're not even playing football anymore. Garbage. I just don't think it's that extreme. I don't think people are going to turn the TV off because their football viewing experience is so dramatically impacted by somebody committing a hip drop tackle, getting a flag, and an offense getting a fresh set of downs. The problem is the officiating. You're putting an additional burden on the officials to get this right. I have no issue with the rule change. My issue is, can it be officiated correctly? I just don't see any way, shape, or form in which this helps level out or bring to a level the kind of consistency that coaches and fans demand from officiating. I think this is going to be an unholy mess.
Did the new pass rushing rules in terms of hitting the quarterback dramatically alter the viewing experience? Landing with your body weight on top of the quarterback, making any contact with the helmet or head area?
Dramatically, no. It's frustrating for sure. I can't imagine what it is to be a defender, to think that you've done your job successfully, only to have somebody determine who is standing 25 feet behind you that you put just a little too much weight on the quarterback as you fell flying through the air as a 300-pound defensive lineman.
It's just, how many times are we going to run into, like we do with the rules on hitting quarterbacks now? Like, yeah, okay, I guess that was against the rule by the letter of the law, but what do you want the guy to do in that scenario? How many times will this rule change lead to us saying, well, there's nothing else he can do in that moment? Yeah, technically, that falls under the swivel hip drop tackle ban, but like the pass rusher thing, like how many times do we see guys sack a quarterback and have no option but to land on top of the guy that he is tackling because that's what his job is to do?
Again, to put that to determine that in the hands of the officials is the thing that concerns me.
Yes, that's the problem, is you're making their jobs that much harder.
They already have an impossibly hard job. We spend so much damn time talking about refs and calls that are made in games, and that's fine. That's not going away. Where you can't put the genie back in the bottle that way. There's too many angles of replay. There's too many gambling investments that are involved in getting these calls exactly the right way, that the job of the official is always going to be looked at as, well, just do better. I don't know how much, unless AI is going to come for the refs' jobs and make it that much more accurate in terms of how we call these games, the way that we're considering moving away from the chain gang and how we measure these games to be a little more scientific about it. You're just going to have to eat a certain level of human error. And I think that most people are okay with that, even in a time where social media gives us the ability to overreact to literally every single call, every single play made on the field, to where it feels a lot bigger than it actually is. I'm not saying that the outcomes of these games are not big deals, especially given, as I mentioned, the amount of money that's being wagered on them now. I just don't think that there's ever going to be a time in sports, whether it's football, basketball, baseball, or otherwise, where there's just no room for human error. Are we okay with that? I don't know. We're going to have to be. Otherwise, we're talking about fundamentally altering so many other things about the sport, and I just don't think you can do that. Maybe not yet. 615-737-1045 is how you interact, if you would like to. Scotty in Gallatin is up first. Hey, Scotty.
Hey, you there?
Yep.
I am still trying to visualize. Are we talking about the Jenick man grabbed by the waist, slam on the ground? I mean, I can't even visualize what a waist drop tackle is. So if y'all could help me out, I would really appreciate it. I mean, for running back in the backfield, you hit him in the hips and you tackle him by his ankles. Is that bad? I mean, I don't know. That's what I'm curious and asking y'all. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for the call, Scotty. So, I'm going to do my best to audibly articulate this, all right? It involves a swivel technique in which, and this is defined by the league, a player, quote, grabs the runner with both hands or wraps the runner with both hands and unweights himself by swiveling and dropping his hips and or lower body, landing on and trapping the runner's legs at or below the knee. Okay? Now, what does unweights himself mean? Basically, you're then swiveling in the air to bring your weight down on the legs or lower body of the runner as you've got him by the waist. It's a tough thing, man. I'm really nervous for how many different games this is going to be decided. For no other reason than, Lucas, I don't want to come in here talking about a ref throwing a flag for a tackle. That's a huge play. 15 yards against the defense and an automatic first down. That's a huge play.
It's going to decide games. I mean, it might be the right thing to do, but it's going to drive people insane this year. You can already see it. Like, you can already envision the scenarios.
Oh, just Scotty is a perfect example of that. What do they have to do now? I mean, and the point is, you can teach other ways of tackling and show this as an example over and over and over again and say, hey, you can't do this anymore or it's a fine. But you are limiting the tools and the skill set of a defensive player even more than they're already limited by rule, and expecting people to be okay with it.
Well, what's going to happen is we're having these discussions, and then after this week, these discussions will kind of fizzle a little bit, right? Because and March Madness is heating up again, then it's draft talk.
And you don't want to talk about tackle form 3 weeks after they make the rule change.
And then we're going to be talking about training camp. Then the season will be started, and everybody will have forgotten about this. Everyone will have forgotten that they changed the kickoff rule.
Yeah.
And then we're going to line up for the opening kickoff on Thursday Night Football Week 1. Oh, who's playing the
have they announced it?
Yeah, I think we know who's playing the first game, or maybe we don't. We know who's playing the Hall of Fame game. The Texans are in the Hall of Fame game. But anyway, we're going to line up for the opening kickoff to kick off the NFL regular season on Thursday night, and fans are going to flip their TV on, ready to watch football, and say, what the hell is happening when they see the kick coverage team lining up on the opponent's 40?
What do you mean he unweighted himself properly? Just that term, or improperly. It's going to make people insane. Lucas is exactly right. But the point is, can they make this game as safe as humanly possible without completely taking away the thing that makes us all love football, which, rightly or wrongly, is the violence, okay? The violence of football is why we love it. It doesn't completely change the sport. It just makes the defense have to work a lot harder. I'd hate it if I was a defensive player. I would love to talk to Blaine about it at some point. I'm sure we will as we're changing shifts here before Blaine and Mickey starts and our show ends. But this is done with the baseline of player safety. And if there is, in fact, as they've determined, a 25% spike in the rate of injury just due to this one technique, then they have no choice but to make a rule against it. They have no choice. 615-737-1045 is how you weigh in. Let's go to Kevin in Franklin next.
Hey, Buck. Question for you. With it being, we're asking the refs more and more to kind of interpret this. Do you think it's going to be more so, at least in the beginning, where the league looks at this after the fact and kind of, sends them a letter or says something like after they're able to review it, so it's not necessarily as much in game? as opposed to review it after the fact and say, hey, here's a fine, this is what you did, because it's just asking more and more for the referees to do in game.
So are you, Kevin, just so I'm clear, are you talking about like what the NBA does where there's the last 2-minute report where they go back after the fact? I just want to make sure I'm answering your question correctly. Are you referencing something like that but in the NFL?
No, I'd almost be more so like where they're doing like targeting and other kind of things where it's, they look at it, after the game is over and then, send them a fine or something, albeit small.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. So for the players, okay, I misunderstood the question. No, it sounds like they're going to call it on the field, right? I mean, because he brought up targeting. Targeting is something that's determined in real time. Now, they get feedback from New York where they're watching these things on additional monitors to make sure that the review is accurate. But there's hardly ever a situation other than, what we talk about with some of the fines that get determined for players afterwards. Now, the fine may be determined afterwards. Is there any fine associated with the hip drop tackle? That's not something that I've seen as a part of the ruling, because the fine may be days later, but they're going to call this in real time, which is the most problematic issue of it. Whatever fines are assessed, if there are fines assessed, and I haven't seen any language to that effect, that doesn't mean that it exists. It's just not out there yet. I would be surprised to see anything like that.
And it was unanimous. Like, just keeping that in mind, every owner voted for banning this swivel hip drop tackle.
But here's the thing, okay? Because I saw this about the kickoff, the new XFL kickoff that they're going to implement.
Which was not unanimous.
Right. Pittsburgh considered voting against the XFL kickoff format until they saw that it was going to win. So when I hear unanimous, you're not wrong. It's not inaccurate. But I'm just saying, how many people looked around and said, all right, this thing is going to pass. We might as well vote for it. Doesn't matter anyway.
Yeah, but it didn't happen for the kickoff rule.
Sure.
3 teams, I think the Eagles, the Niners were in there as teams that voted against it.
Did you see what Jonnu Smith tweeted, Titans legend?
No.
We don't care about the tackles. Just get rid of turf fields.
I saw Kenyon Drake heavy on this, very much in support of getting rid of this tackle.
Well, sure. If you are, like, again, I'll use the example. If you're Delaney Walker and you believe at your heart of hearts, and I don't know, how realistic Delaney is about where he was at that point in his career, his age, other factors that could be involved in why it was that his career ended when it did. But Delaney Walker feels like the biggest reason that his career ended as an NFL football player is because of a tackle like this. I'm sure he's not alone.
They are going to get to review now certain penalties like roughing the passer and intentional grounding. That did change. So that's a good thing, I think, for NFL fans. Apart from objective, like if a defensive tackle clubs a quarterback in the head, there's nothing to review, right? Or intentional grounding. Sometimes it's just there's nothing to review. But just the fact that there will be an option to look at it, or maybe it'll turn into the pass interference thing where it never gets reversed.
So you have the new kickoff format. You have the hip drop tackle out. You also have the NFL just taking over Christmas. That's a thing that was also determined at the NFL owners' meetings, and that the trade deadline would now move back from after Week 10, which was the Steelers' proposal, post-Week 9 proposal accepted. So they've moved the trade deadline back a full week at this point. We'll take more of your phone calls on this coming up next. Lucas also has SEC observations. We've got the dumbest thing in sports at 11 o'clock, Lucas. What can they win? Not yet. Don't call us yet. But what can they win at 11 o'clock if they give us the dumbest thing in sports this week?
Your chance to see REO Speedwagon and Train is on the line if you have the best submission for the dumbest thing in sports this week at the top of the 11 o'clock hour. If you call now, you will not get the tickets, so please don't dial that number for that at the moment. But August 18th, First Bank Amphitheater, REO Speedwagon and Train.
I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone.
Below MSRP? Below MSRP. Below MSRP. It's pretty simple. Two Rivers Ford sells all new non-specialty Fords below MSRP.
So we gave up on Sierra after one song, yeah?
You want to go Sierra every bump back.
Lucas, I don't just say those things because they're throwaway lines. I'm trying to prevent myself from having to listen to the terrible 3HL music.
Oh, not a Dr. Dre fan.
No, it's
Buck
not
Rising.
a Dr. Dre thing. It's just
hang on. I can't do two. I'm writing this down. Buck Rising hates Dr. Dre.
I hate his headphones. They're terrible. Beats suck.
They do. Yeah.
They're just objectively bad. All right? That's my Dr. Dre hot take. That's not the point. It's not an issue with Dr. Dre. I like a theme. I like consistency. I like to know where we're going, okay?
Americana Bluegrass.
Yes.
Is where you want to go today. I mean, I love me. I know I love Sierra Farrell.
Clearly not.
I love when
It's
you
like
discover someone and then just want to
hammer it.
Become obsessed with them for like a week.
Isn't that how everybody does it?
That's fair.
615-737-1045 is the number if you've got some thoughts on the NFL and its rule changes. Jason in Murfreesboro is next.
Hey, guys. How y'all doing this morning?
Good.
My thought is I'm a defensive-minded guy. I love the defense. They were all these rule changes and everything, how it affects the defense. And let's change it up. And since we got all this stuff that can prevent the defense from tackling, let's make the offense have to go 15 or 20 yards on their first down instead of first and 10, since they get all this extra, help from the referees and the defense can't tackle a certain way. Let's make them go a little further.
Yeah, nobody's going to do that. No, nobody's going to actively work against offense. More offense. I want more offense. I want more points. I want more scoring. I want more yardage. More offense. Do you do that? Do you just? He said he's a defensive-minded guy. I assume that Jason in Murfreesboro does not work in football in some form or fashion. So do you refer to yourself as an offensive-minded guy or a defensive-minded guy just in day-to-day life?
We should start doing that.
As us normies?
Like how we label coaches, like defensive-minded, offensive-minded head coaches. We should start doing that with radio personalities.
Am I an offensive guy or a defensive guy?
Like, what is Robert? A specialist? He's pretty special.
Let's talk about SEC, baby. Let's talk about the SEC. Let's talk about Nick Saban and Josh Heupel in the SEC. Let's talk about SEC, baby. Let's talk about the SEC. Let's talk about Brian Kelly and Greg Sankey in the SEC. Let's talk about SEC.
2 SEC teams left in the big dance. 8 entered. 3 got to the Sweet 16. 3 got to the second round. 2 are still alive in the Sweet 16. They are Tennessee and Alabama. Alabama has to play North Carolina. Thursday night, late game, 8:40. Tennessee's even later. 9:20, I believe, is the tip-off on Friday night.
Oh, my God. People in Knoxville have to be pissed.
After 10. At least it's on a Friday night. First of all, Alabama plays the 1 seed, North Carolina. This is going to be a fun game. Alabama, obviously, with the electric offense. Mark Sears has been fantastic. 20-plus points in his last 4. R.J. Davis has been fantastic. And North Carolina, much better defensive team, an all-around team than Alabama. So I really don't know what the pace of this game is going to look like. But Tennessee plays a Creighton team that's not necessarily deep, but has some of the elements that give the Vols trouble. A big inside presence, good perimeter shooting. They just don't go to their bench very often, which I talked to Casey Alexander about this Monday, and he doesn't think fatigue's going to be a factor for Creighton.
How many times did you have Casey on since Thursday? I saw him on this radio station 3 different times.
Just Monday.
You sure?
Yeah, he joined us.
On Friday, too?
He joined you and I on Thursday, and then he joined me on Monday. Yes, okay. And I'm sure we'll talk to him again next week. So there are ways in which Creighton is a poor matchup for Tennessee. But Tennessee is a far deeper team, and if they can get the Creighton big man, Kalkbrenner, into foul trouble, then they'll be in trouble. And we saw what happened. Houston scraped by against A&M with like 4 guys fouling out. If Tennessee can get Creighton into that sort of situation late Friday night, but they're still alive, and they scraped by the skin of their teeth. How did you take in the Tennessee game?
Oh, my God.
Against Texas.
I knew that they won, so I had the wedding in L.A. on Saturday night. So, obviously, I wasn't going to see the game live. I had all day Sunday at the resort to go back and watch the game. I knew the result. I knew it was close. I knew they had a bad shooting night, Tennessee. I did not think that Lucas, while I was watching that game the entire time, knowing the results in hand, that I felt like they were going to lose that game the entire time I was watching it, knowing that they win at the end. I'm like, how the hell do they win this game?
It was so weird, such a weird game in that simultaneously you felt like Tennessee should be winning this game by 20 with how well they were playing defensively and how shots weren't falling. But at the same time, you were also saying Tennessee had no business winning that game.
Connect was like 5 of 18.
It was crazy. I don't know that I have ever had the amount of relief wash over me like I did after that game.
I can't imagine.
In my sports fanhood career, I don't think I've ever felt that much pure relief after a final buzzer, because I was starting to feel it. I was starting to feel the relief. It was washing over me at the end of the game, and then Texas hit that 3. And I said, oh, no. And then ultimately, credit to Dalton Knecht and Jonas Adu, who missed a lot of shots, but hit their free throws late. And that was kind of a struggling point for Tennessee at times in the regular season, especially for Dalton Knecht. But the ball just was not destined to go through the net. And they were getting good looks. The entire game, they were getting good looks. And it's pinballing out. And Jonas Adu's missing layups in the beginning. He's missing a big dunk at the end of the game. Tobe Awaka was a godsend for Tennessee in that game. Really saved their offense with some offensive rebounding and second chance layups in the first half before he got into foul trouble and had to go to the bench. So, yeah, scraped by over the weekend. And we'll talk more about the Creighton matchup, I'm sure, at the end of the week. But rough NCAA tournament for the SEC, with 2 teams alive in the Sweet 16 after coming in with 8.
I fully expected, because I haven't been on the air since Kentucky lost.
Cal's back, by the way.
I know. I saw.
Not going anywhere.
Matt Norlander at CBS reported that there was a real chance that he may not have a job, even though his buyout is $33 million, which in the world of SEC football doesn't sound like much. But $33 million for a basketball coach is a ton of money.
Well, that used to be a record buyout in college football until Jimbo happened.
Sure. I'm genuinely surprised to see Cal back. I really am. Even as I understand that to fire him, they have to have an answer. The reason that he is there is not just the buyout, but because what do you do with John Calipari, or who do you replace John Calipari with? It's a nightmare situation. But the thing about the Kentucky stuff, just to kind of, I know there's been several days to talk about this since then, but I haven't got a chance to. The thing about the Kentucky stuff is he's a little like Saban to me, Lucas. Their recruiting, it's not what it used to be. Now that the playing field is openly level, I don't know how much magic Cal still got. Because it used to be he could just justify everything, all the disappointments with the recruiting, with the talent that he was bringing in. That's no longer the case. I don't know if you've looked at what they're bringing in next year, but it's not very impressive.
They were still one of the most talented teams in college basketball this season, right? I mean, you're going to hear Kentucky names called in the NBA draft in a few months. They've got the number 2 recruiting class in the country in 2024. So I don't think talent acquisition is going to be an issue for Cal, but they're in this sort of prison where the talent's going to be there. Maybe it's taken somewhat of a dip, and the playing field is definitely leveled. I'll give you that. But they've hit this weird ceiling in the opening weekend of the tournament where the structure of the program is there and the fan base, and Cal didn't forget how to coach basketball. But just his methods, I think, that's what has Kentucky fans up in arms. They're tired of the continuous, we're putting out draft picks, but we can never have a veteran team. Who's the best Kentucky basketball player over the last couple of years? Most impactful for Kentucky? The answer is Oscar Tshiebwe.
I was going to say Tshiebwe, but even he was...
No, it's Tshiebwe. I mean, he's the most impactful player they have had at the college level, the most consistent player they have had, certainly, after he transferred from West Virginia. He's the only, quote-unquote, old guy they've had on the roster in the last 5 years. Whereas you look at the teams that are still alive in the NCAA tournament, and they're old. It's nothing new. The NCAA tournament, you find success with veterans, veteran guard play and depth. And they've had depth, they've had talent, but they have not had veterans, and Kentucky fans want to change there.
Beat by a dude that looked like Jimmy Neutron in the first round.
That was awesome. That was so awesome.
Yeah, until they got spanked. 615-737-1045 is the number. You're going to need that number to give us the dumbest thing in sports this week for the chance to win some tickets to see Train and REO Speedwagon. I'm Buck Rising. It's 1045 The Zone.
It is 11:03. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica from the 104.5 The Zone studios. In NFL news, the Steelers have signed 33-year-old specialist Cordero Patterson on a 2-year, $6 million deal. Patterson reunites with new Steelers OC and former Titans play caller Arthur Smith, who was his head coach in Atlanta. Also, free agent corner Tre'Davious White reportedly will sign a 1-year, $8.5 million deal with the Rams. White was an All-Pro with the Bills in 2019. Tennessee football, Austin Price of VolQuest reported this morning that Tennessee sophomore running back Cam Seldon will miss the remainder of spring practice with a shoulder injury. The Vols play their spring game on April 13th. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
All right, you need that phone number. It's 11 o'clock on a Wednesday, just a little after. We got the dumbest thing in sports for you this week. The opportunity to win what kind of tickets, Lucas? All they got to do is give us the dumbest thing in sports this week with the phone number 615-737-1045. What do they win?
A pair of tickets to see Train and REO Speedwagon at First Bank Amphitheater August 18th. Call now.
Have you ever seen either of those acts live?
No, I was a big Train guy in middle school, early high school, but REO Speedwagon with some classics as well, of course.
I saw Train at the Indianapolis Super Bowl between the Patriots and the Giants. That was Eli Brady round 2. They were performing in the streets. They opened up for LMFAO.
Wow.
That's how long ago that was. Either way, Train, still out here doing it. If you want some tickets to a fun show, it is a fun live show. 615-737-1045. All you got to do is give us the dumbest thing in sports this week. But first, we got to give you ours.
Let's be honest. You've already seen something this week that made you say,
What the is this?
That's bullshit.
What the hell? Give me some warning.
something so mind-numbingly idiotic that you just want to get it off your chest.
Dumber than a second coat of paint.
Some idiot. You are really dumb. For real.
It's the dumbest thing in sports this week on the Buck Rising Show.
All right, now I like Trey Wingo personally, but he is my dumbest thing in sports this week. Now, what we have not gotten into in the hour that I've been back on the radio show is the L'Jarius Sneed trade, because that happened on the Friday that I was absent, and Lucas has obviously held it down to start this week in reaction to that. We'll talk about it here in just a second. Don't you worry. But obviously, anytime there's a trade of that substance or of that consequence, there's going to be reactions. You got people writing articles about winners and losers of the deal, this, that, and the other. And so Trey Wingo had, formerly of ESPN, now Trey is, let me double check. He's got a podcast. That's what the link to, so he's doing a podcast called Alternate Routes for a company called Wondery. All right, so I'm unfamiliar, but he's got a podcast. That's where Trey Wingo is right now. Of course, many of you know him most from ESPN. Anyway, he puts out a picture of what looks like the Athletics Titans Sneed trade grades. All right, their article. Titans win big. What were the Chiefs thinking? With an explanation on the thought process. And Trey Wingo quote tweets this and says, LOL, what were the Chiefs thinking? The Chiefs cleared $20 million in cap space with this move, and the Titans gave a ridiculous contract to Ridley, but sure. If I was an attorney arguing this in court, I would say, Your Honor, objection, relevance. What does Calvin Ridley's contract have anything to do with the Titans' acquisition of L'Jarius Sneed? It just feels like a needless thing to taking a shot at a contract that I guess you don't agree with, which is fine. That's well within your rights. You're well within your rights to think that Calvin Ridley got overpaid here. He probably did. That's okay. They don't have anybody worth overpaying on this roster currently. It's okay if they pay for somebody else's players too. That he turned it into a thing about the ridiculous contract to Ridley as opposed to the value that a team who has really no defensive backs to speak of other than Amani Hooker and Raj McCreary, adding a corner like Sneed and turning it into a Ridley contract discussion. I didn't understand the point other than it bothered Titans fans. If that was the objective, it clearly achieved it. Trey Wingo is my dumbest thing in sports this week.
Tough for Trey. We haven't had him on the show. We had him on the show early in the show's existence.
He was, that was right after he left ESPN. He was promoting what?
Some draft stuff or gambling stuff. I don't remember.
That's very thoughtful of you to just to remember our time with Trey Wingo. It meant that much to you. He's just promoting some gambling stuff as it keeps us all afloat.
Remember it fondly. My dumbest thing in sports this week is too much of the reaction from the new kickoff rules. If you don't like the swivel hip drop tackle, you think that it's not real football, all right, whatever. If you don't like that the NFL is taking the physicality out of the game for player safety, whatever. I'm not gonna try and argue with you. But if you think that the new kickoff rule is a piece of that, then you're not paying attention. Way too much reaction of the new kickoff rule. Guess we're just going to keep playing flag football. What are you talking about? We're taking a pointless play and we're making it an actual play. We're giving an opportunity for something to happen without guys running 50, 60 yards and colliding into each other for absolutely no reason when the ball's being kicked out of the back of the end zone 90% of the time. So if that's your opinion of the new kickoff rule, then I appreciate you saying that because it gives me reason not to pay any attention to any other opinions you might have about the NFL.
I like that. All opinions don't matter. Let's start there.
I think not all opinions matter.
Not all
probably
opinions
the way.
matter. All opinions don't matter? Yeah.
All opinions don't matter makes it sound like every opinion on planet Earth does not matter.
Well, that's just generally my outlook on life. 615-737-1045 is the number. Kyle in Springfield has the dumbest thing in sports this week.
What's going on, boys?
What's up?
I have a question. It might be the dumbest thing in sports this week. What are they going to do with your post-safety play? Somebody gets a safety. Are we still going to punt and have the old kickoff rules? Are we going to do new kickoff rules on it? Or is that just an egregious oversight by the NFL?
So okay. I see what you're saying. I took it as the defensive back safety, not like the safety rule.
No,
okay.
like the punt after a safety.
Right.
Which I don't think has changed.
Is there a need to change it?
I don't think so because you're not seeing touchbacks on those. There are returns coming of that. So I guess it's Kyle's dumbest thing in sports, just that we're doing away with the traditional kickoff, but not the punt after a safety.
Yeah, but the punt after a safety doesn't injure people the way that the kickoff in its true form. That's why this is being done. It brings back, it brings back the excitement of some semblance of a return game, and also limits the amount of just full speed collisions that players are experiencing when a ball is actually returnable. So I don't know that the punt after a safety has anything to do with that. Carrie is in Goodlettsville up next.
My thing is, it's the Kentucky fans continuously buying up the weekend hotel rooms, and all they get to do is sit and cry. And I'm a big Vandy fan, but I don't buy the Omaha tickets. And then
so wait, your dumbest thing in sports is the Kentucky fans buying up the hotels just to sit in them for the rest of the weekend?
Yeah, they do it. They buy up Nashville every SEC tournament, and now they're doing the same thing. 4 out of the last 5 years in the NCAA tournament. So.
I like that, Carrie. Thank you, Kentucky, for continuing to prop up our economy.
No doubt.
We appreciate it. I like that by Carrie.
And thank you, Kentucky, for continuing to get eliminated from the SEC tournament, making those tickets cheaper for everybody for the championship game.
I don't know if there's a basketball program. It's not even Duke anymore. I feel like people don't have that kind of – there's not been a – Filipowski's not this hated figure in the way that so
I don't
many.
know. The thing around the injury after the court storming against Wake Forest was a big talking point. But like John Shire, like people hated Coach K. Do people feel that strongly about John Shire?
Yeah,
Not until he wins meaningfully.
And they're not doing that.
Not really. They're still alive.
So Kentucky is the team that we still like seeing lose, but it's not like they're winning as of late has them any kind of more relevant. It's just people like to see Kentucky fans mad, of which I am one. Thank you for losing. James is in Portland.
Yeah, I just mine's going to be on the new tackle rule, that swivel tackle. I haven't really checked it out that much, but I don't know. It just seems like it's going to slow the game down, cause penalties, give other quarterbacks just reasons to cry about it.
Yeah, I mean, you're not alone, James. I feel like a lot of people are going to have an issue with it. Again, my issue is not with the rule. My issue is how the officials are going to call it, because that I expect to be a disaster, not how much they're hip drop tackling or not. One more. Joseph in Huntsville.
My dumbest thing in sports is the MMA fighter biting the guy on the arm in the fight, the first round. And then the guy gets a tattoo of the bite on his arm. That's my dumbest thing in sports.
I'm unfamiliar with the story that he's talking about. There's just somebody biting people in the MMA ring.
I do love getting a tattoo of the bite, though. I kind of like that.
It's not like a cool bite. It's not like a shark bite tattoo or something. It's just some dude's canines in your forearm. All right, Kevin in Brentwood is next.
Yes, sir.
What's the dumbest thing in sports?
Oh man, there's all sorts of dumb things.
Well, pick one.
Dumbest thing.
Okay, you took too long.
Kevin was not prepared.
What the hell, Kevin? You got one job. Lucas, I said last call. Lucas says, one more real quick. There's plenty. He says, what's up?
Wait.
What do you mean, what's up?
What's the dumbest thing? Oh, there's all sorts of dumb things.
I'm doing a damn radio show here, Kevin.
He said, I'm glad you asked, Buck. There's all sorts of things to talk about.
Oh, that's swell.
Oh.
Then it didn't. He's all sorts of dumb things. Can't come up with one as soon as I ask him for one.
Who's the winner?
Carrie.
Yeah. We can all unite.
I don't know. Should it?
On laughing at Kentucky fans.
Should it not have been that guy? That guy was the dumbest thing in sports this week. What the hell?
Yeah, but he's gone now.
All right. Petty. 615-737-1045 is how you join the discussion. Let's talk Brian Callahan and the Titans' new strength staff coming up next. So Titans head coach and GM were in attendance along with Amy Adams-Strunk at the NFL owners meetings earlier this week. Those have since concluded. Have a couple of interesting headlines come out of that, but I don't know if there's one that's more interesting to Titans fans than that of the completion of the staff, including the new director of sports performance, Zach Woodfin. Now, we talked about him a couple of weeks ago when it was determined that this was the person that the Titans would be hiring. And then over the weekend, they did finalize that with the staff under him, including Mark Lovett, John Shaw, and a handful of people that were being retained from Mike Vrabel's strength and conditioning staff. Some new names, Grant Thorne and Ansley Moore, a director of player and family affairs. I believe that's a new position. Or at least I wasn't familiar with the person who was in that position previously, but remember, that was something that Wes Woodyard spoke about, the way that players felt that their families were treated by the previous administration, less than ideal. So they hire a director of player and family affairs. Strength and conditioning, though. I don't know if there's a more polarizing part of this football team that people know less about, right? It's really, really hard to determine how well or how poorly a strength and conditioning staff is operating in, because by the NFLPA player grades, Titans thought of pretty highly. Frank Perrano thought of pretty highly. Todd Torricelli, who's still there, thought of pretty highly by the players who voted on this thing.
Well, was it a B plus?
B plus.
Now, how did that stack up with the rest of the league, though? Right? Like, if it's a B plus, but the majority of the league is getting A minus, I'd be curious to see how that kind of ranked.
That's a fair point. But not something that players overwhelmingly had an issue with. Fans seem to think that the strength and condition, and I don't want to cast a wide net here if this is a position that you haven't taken, but just based off the feedback that we get, it seems like you guys attribute your injury bad luck to not bad luck, but directly to your strength and conditioning staff without having tangible evidence of it, right? That feels like a conversation that we've been, and I'm not saying that evidence doesn't exist somewhere, but based on what's available for you to consume and make these determinations off of, it doesn't feel like there is that one thing that you can point to and say, well, the strength and conditioning staff sucks. That's why the Titans are 30th in games lost due to injury over the course of the last 2 years.
I think fans, more than anything, just wanted to see something be addressed to try and fix it. Like, do something, whether that's the strength staff or how you go about your practice schedule. That is and it's like when a mistake happens on special teams, fans look at the special teams coach, right? Bad play call on offense, fans look at the offensive coordinator. Injuries, fans look at the strength and conditioning staff. That's where they that's how they compartmentalize things and accountability.
Sure, and that's fine, but I'm just saying for fans, like, where on special teams, you can determine the lack of preparedness by the special teams unit that led to Ryan Stonehouse's injury that ultimately got Craig Aukerman fired here, among several other things over the course of several other seasons. But the tipping point was, oh, you weren't ready for this. The Colts read you like an open book, and they ended the punter's season. One of the few bright spots on this roster, they ended his season as a result. That directly correlated to somebody losing their job. Strength and conditioning, it's not that clean, right? You can figure out what Tim Kelly's first down play calling tendencies are. You can determine how often Shane Bowen is feeling it necessary to blitz and how often that may or may not work out in their favor as a offensive or defensive coordinator, respectively. I'm saying that from layman's terms, strength and conditioning is the hardest thing to kind of suss out because you don't have access to that. We don't have access to that. The only thing that we can go off of is what people tell us, and it's not like there's been any overwhelming outcries from inside the facility about the strength and conditioning staff. Either way, Frank Perano's out and Zach Woodfin is in, among several other parts and pieces that have changed place from Mike Vrabel to Brian Callahan. Now, Brian Callahan was asked about the strength and conditioning staff at the owners' meetings this week. This audio is courtesy of whom, Lucas?
Jim Wyatt.
Okay, Jim Wyatt, who will join us at 12:20. This is what the Titans head coach had to say about his new strength and conditioning staff.
Yeah, that was a really important hire, and I waited till the end of it so I could really spend all my attention focused on who the best person for that role would be, and Zach has knocked it out of the park. He's fantastic. Ton of really interesting experiences. Been ahead of a department in college, a couple places. Was doing the USFL, XFL league. So we got really unique experience as a head coach in the strength and conditioning world. And what I think is really cool is the guys that he brought with him. And we had two people with Haley and Brian Bell that I think are really fantastic coaches and people that we wanted to keep. And he had a couple of guys that he wanted to bring with him. And I think we've done a really good job of dividing that department. You know, we have someone that's going to do the sports science. We have someone that's going to do the speed. We have a head coach. So I think we've made that program a little bit more robust with adding some more pieces and some more knowledge to try to do the best we can to keep those guys getting stronger, faster, and stay healthier. At the end of the day, a lot of emphasis gets placed on the strength and conditioning in the training room as injury prevention process. I mean, it's all a part of it. I think a lot of it has to do with how and what you do in practice in conjunction with that strength and conditioning and training room. But I just think the approach will be good. I think we'll do everything we can to make sure we're on top of the science part of it, the load management, and then how we schedule and structure practices will be, I think, a huge part of trying to keep guys healthy. Just the emphasis on it, the emphasis of having someone that has an expertise in it to add into the staff, that knows how to teach it, that knows how to manage it. Speed is, as they say, speed isn't really permanent. It's something you have to work on throughout the course of the year. And so having someone that's got an expertise in that is something that we're excited to add.
So that's a variety of different answers from Brian Callahan, courtesy of Jim Wyatt, at the owners' meetings about the emphasis on strength and conditioning, the various ways in which it's divvied up, which is not, insight that we've necessarily talked about before. I feel, Lucas, do you feel like sports science is probably the thing that you and I are least equipped to talk about?
Sure. Yeah.
In terms of just medical expertise and different kinds of training regimens that these athletes do. We can watch all the Derrick Henry Instagram workout videos that we want, but still not necessarily understand the application of each specific workout to that player's strengths or what their weaknesses are that they're trying to improve or whatever the case may be.
Now, Dave makes the point because Titans fans and us, we've been scrambling for what were the two really injury-plagued seasons? 21 and 22.
21 and 22.
Right? Record-setting type seasons. Yeah. And we're scrambling. Okay, what is it? Is it the strength staff? Is it injury-prone players? Is it players not taking care of their bodies? Is it the state of the field at the end of the year?
It's bad luck.
It has to be more than that. It has to be more than that. Like, at some point, it stops just being luck. It stops being luck. It has to. But that's the hard thing.
You can say that as definitively as you just did when over 85% of the injuries are happening on the field. You see what I'm saying?
Sure, but bad luck to be worst in the league in back-to-back years. Like, I just don't believe in that sort of luck. That it's really hard for me, and I agree with you. It's so nebulous and difficult to pin down, but clearly that's what Brian Callahan's trying to do in talking about all the different factors. Dave makes the point on the F&M Bank chat. Did we not get less injuries last year on the new turf? It seemed like it. Last year was not to the level of 21 and 22.
No, because they broke the record in 21, and they damn near tied the record in 22. Now, here's what I'll tell you, okay? Because there's not some quantifiable thing. There's not something that I can present to you, Lucas, as evidence that it was anything but bad luck in those two seasons.
Yeah, that's what's hard.
Other than the belief in the building that some of the ways that Mike Vrabel may have conducted practices contributed to a difficulty keeping guys healthy. if that makes sense.
Sure.
Now, vets, I mean, guys like Ben Jones and Derrick Henry barely practiced. I don't know how much different the practice schedules are for, let's just use Christian Fulton as the example. Christian Fulton, who dealt with soft tissue injuries, who went and saw a specialist in Miami about it, who has continued to train with him, now obviously signing with the Los Angeles Chargers, so it doesn't matter for our applications anymore. But Christian Fulton's practice schedule or practice requirements versus a Derrick Henry, where Derrick has earned all the time off that he wants. Maybe the coaching staff doesn't view Christian Fulton that same way. I'm not saying, I'm just using a hypothetical here. I have no idea how they handled Christian Fulton in practices. I'm just saying there's a belief in the building that Mike Vrabel's practice habits may have contributed to the difficulty that they had getting guys back out on the field who had sustained injury. And we'll see if Zach Woodfin has a, I won't call it a cure, but a different approach. It's a really difficult thing to suss through because Jason Welch on Facebook Live in the chat says, bring on an expert to discuss. That expert cannot tell us unless the expert is the Titans' former strength and conditioning coach in Frank Pirano. They can't tell us exactly the things that were being done in Tennessee versus how they're done in Philadelphia. Philadelphia is an example that I use a lot just because they have one of the most dedicated or biggest strength and conditioning programs, sports science programs of any NFL program that's out there, starting with Chip Kelly and continuing that into further advancements. There's a 100%, the one thing that Vrabel said all the time that I know people got tired of, but it still holds true. There's a 100% chance of injury in football. And Lucas, I know that it's hard to imagine a situation in which in 2 straight seasons they were as unlucky as any team in football. But the Baltimore Ravens are the exact same. If you brought Burden here and asked him about those same 2 seasons, Robert, who's a Ravens fan, he would tell you that they by games lost were more injured than the Titans and still found ways to overcome. Now, the Titans did find ways to overcome in 2021. They still got the number 1 overall seed. The biggest difference was the quarterback maintained his health, and that was the biggest advantage for them throughout the course of that season. But if you brought Burden here and had this discussion, I'm sure he would bring up a lot of the same grievances on behalf of Ravens fans. And the thing that you would have to just sit there and eat is basically, yeah, they were super unlucky in 2 seasons.
I just understand why Titans fans do not want to hear the answer, bad luck, when they watch it happen in back-to-back years and then watch A.J. Brown, who seemingly could never stay healthy for an entire season here, go to Philly and play in every game for the 2 seasons since then.
Agreed.
And be completely healthy through that time. And work through nicks and bruises like everybody, but not have to miss any time.
I completely understand that. I'm not saying that Titans fans aren't right to be tired of it. I'm just saying that they're not always going to get the answer that they want.
I know, but just because we can't pinpoint what it is, I don't think means we should just turn to shrugging our shoulders, say, yeah, it's luck, it happens.
Well, that's not
like
what
it doesn't
we're
mean
doing.
You can't be searching for answers. And I think that's what Brian Callahan and the Titans are doing here. They're approaching this very, very differently.
Oh, sure.
The strength staff is twice as big as it was under Vrabel.
There's a difference between the people who actually know what the problem is to suss out and discern, as this coaching staff is tasked with doing, versus us just sitting there throwing darts. You know what I'm saying? Like, their job is to determine this, and the best that we can do with the information that we are armed with is try and figure out the differences, and that may be a difficult thing that we're not necessarily the best equipped for, is all I'm saying. Just because it is a tiresome answer doesn't mean that that's not the core of the issue. Sometimes it's just awful, awful luck. We'll take more of your phone calls on this coming up next. 615-737-1045 is the number if you want to jump in. I'm Buck Rising. It's 1045 The Zone. Welcome back to the show. We have wedding observations that we'll get to here in just a little bit. We still haven't talked about L'Jarius Sneed since I've been back. Suppose we can do that here in just a second.
That's not true. You crashed the show on Monday.
Well, yeah, that's different when I'm doing it, as a bit, just so I can do it from the pool veranda, shutters on the beach.
Didn't we talk about L'Jarius Sneed?
Yeah, briefly. It's kind of you don't think I got more than 10 minutes on L'Jarius Sneed in me?
No, I know you do.
Well, either way, we'll have time for that because Terry McCormick of Main Street Media has called the show, which we're happy about. Hey, Terry. What's up, bud?
How you doing, Buck?
I'm good.
Sorry to hijack your show. But
No.
But you made a nice point here, and I wanted to kind of elaborate on it regarding all the injuries. I've had a theory about this for a couple of years now, and I think that part of the reason the Titans have had so many injuries over the last 2 to 3 seasons, it was the style of football that they played under Mike Vrabel, that pound Derrick Henry into the line 25 times a game, street fight style on defense. And the reason I think that created some of the injuries is because with the way the league is going and the way that the NFLPA has stepped in and limited, canceled 2-a-days, limited the number of padded practices you can have throughout the course of training camp and even the regular season. Well, in order to play that smash mouth style most effectively, you got to get into true football shape. And the way the practice rules are now and in the offseason and camp, you can't get into that true football shape to play that style the way you could 15, 20 years ago. And I think, I may be wrong, but I think that as the Titans switch over to a more pass-oriented offense where, they'll be sending more receivers into route, and if the offensive line can somehow protect Will Levis, I think the number of injuries might go down a bit just because of the change in their style.
Terry, I appreciate the fact that you even get the bit about the Oscars music. You got it in less than a minute. We appreciate the call. That's Terry McCormick of Main Street Media. What do you think of Terry's theory?
I don't hate it.
So, I don't know, because I understand what he's saying in principle, right? If you're going to play smash mouth football, you have to be able to practice smash mouth football. And Blaine's talked about this plenty. The idea of physically callousing your body to play a certain style, a certain physical style that the current practice construct and training camp construct does not allow. So on that point, I'm with them.
Which Mike Vrabel didn't want to do in preseason as well. And Brian Callahan has talked about the value he sees in playing starters in the preseason.
So I can't dismiss it because I don't have enough evidence to dismiss it or support it. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's an interesting theory, but that's all that we have right now with this kind of stuff. It's just a bunch of theories that are floating around there. Now, some are more like Terry's, some are more attached to reality than others. But I still struggle with trying to assign so much blame the way that a lot of fans did to the strength and conditioning program previously without quantifiable evidence that allows us to. That's all my point is.
The addition of a speed coach is interesting as well. Speed training.
Well, Mike's been saying that for a couple of years. Rarely are we the fastest team on the field. And then they draft a wide receiver in the 7th. Anyway. You want to do some wedding observations here? Do we have any SEC observations? Do we have any kind of high level sports talk radio production prepared?
What you got?
What's the best wedding you've ever been to?
My good friend Hunter married his wife Caitlin in Chattanooga in 2019, and it was fantastic. I can't remember the name of the venue, but it was more about all the people that were there.
Okay, so for you, it's more about the people.
Oh yeah,
than it is about the components of the wedding.
Oh yeah, easily.
All right, so I present to you the best wedding that I've ever been to in my life, which was this past weekend. Now, full disclosure, for those of you who've been listening to the radio show for a long time, you're aware of the bottle service bit, okay? If you're unaware of the bottle service bit, I had a bunch of college roommates while we were at Indiana. There are bars that have bottle service, tables at the bars. This was an individual that on a regular basis wanted to do bottle service like we were something important on campus, okay? So bottle service boy had a wedding this weekend, and it is the most extra wedding that I've ever been a part of in my life. Now, the reason, Lucas, that it was the best wedding that I've ever been to is because it's all of my, like, day one friends. Like, I'm uncommonly close with, there was a group of people that we went to high school and college together. Those people are still very much in my life, even though we're spread out all over the place. So I'm with you that the people make the wedding more than the actual, bells and whistles of the wedding itself. But it was a combination of the two, because the place that we stayed is something out of White Lotus. Like, without the, I felt like the elevator music was that haunting music in the background from the White Lotus opening credits. If you haven't seen the show on HBO, I'd go invite you to watch it. And at this wedding, nobody died, but people came pretty close. One, because it's literally shutters on the beach. It's on the beach, and at one point there was an attempt to go into the water, and I can't swim. So that was misguided, first and foremost. Do you dance at weddings? Are you a dance floor person at weddings?
I'm not like tearing it up to where there's a crowd forming a circle around me, but yeah, of course. Yeah.
This is a dance circle kind of wedding, okay? And it's led, the ringleader is the groom, the bridezilla, bottle service himself, Evan Bitter, all right? So this is a wedding where if you don't dance, you are going to be judged. And, like, you don't have to be good at dancing, but you got to be willing to get out there and have people looking at you for an extended period of time. So you are not going to bust a move on the dance floor. You're just going to kind of, like what's the movie with Will Smith and the guy from King of Queens?
Hitch.
What's the actor's name?
Kevin James.
So Will Smith and Kevin James, right? Just side to side. Just keep it right here. You get any further than that, you get smacked on the wrist. Don't deviate from the side to side. Keep it simple. You're more side to side than you are, doing the sprinkler out there.
That's your hard and fast rule? It's just the dancing thing?
No, I'm pro dancing, but
say keep it simple. Like, that's your wedding.
Oh, no, I'm out there. Like, especially if I've had a couple of cocktails, as we did throughout the course of this day. I don't care. I don't care who's looking at me. It's very much like my no eating wings in public. Like, I'm out there for everybody. Unfortunately for everybody.
Do you have a strong the wedding itself or the reception, like, in terms of the format of it and the logistics of it? Like, do you have a strong opinion or complaint?
Oh, 100%. Non-religious ceremonies. It's nothing to do with your specific religions. I've got no issue with any religions. Whoever you have faith in, I'm all for it. If you got faith in anything, I respect it, because there's not a lot of things societally to have faith in right now. But if you got it, I respect it. Non-denominational weddings are a plus. Just for the sake of brevity, let's get through it. At this point, this wedding was non-denominational. It was held on the pool deck that I zoomed in from on Monday. The wind was 30 miles an hour and ripped the bride's veil out of her hair as we were getting ready to begin the ceremony. One of my bum college roommates, who's a part of this wedding, had the opportunity to snatch the veil out of the air several times, just let it float right in front of him, didn't do anything about it. I don't know if it was the 17 pours or single pours of scotch that he was drinking prior to the wedding beginning, but just let it float in front of him like an idiot and then off into space. It was one of the most ridiculous. I'm pretty sure a seagull got it. In fact, the seagull did poop on somebody during the ceremony itself.
Fantastic.
But for the purposes of that, brevity, always going to side with the non-denominational.
Yeah.
You got to keep it tight.
I'm with you on that.
When the wedding party is introduced to the reception, you got to do something. You got to have a dance move. You got to have some kind of an entrance, or you just hit it, wave high, maybe a little shoulder shimmy, whatever.
I don't have a policy there, because every wedding I've been in, and I've been in 3 weddings, and all 3 have not introduced the wedding party, just the bride and groom, which I am completely on board for. Nobody cares about the wedding party. We're not there for the wedding party. Just introduce the bride and groom.
Agreed.
Like, let's just do that. We don't have to do some stupid dance walking. Let's just it's not about us. I'd rather not be introduced as part of the wedding party. Thankfully, I am batting 1,000 in that regard in the weddings I have been in. Brevity is paramount, though, and no fall weddings.
The wedding has to have an open bar. Now, I know I know that not everybody wants to spend the kind of, because it's expensive. Listen, this is, I don't know what this wedding cost. I'm going to assume it was north of $250,000. It was the most obscene wedding I've ever seen in my life. It was awesome. I would never tell him this to his face. He's one of my best friends. He's an absolute scumbag. It was the best wedding. It had to be one of the most expensive weddings I've ever been to. That's not a professional athlete. This was unbelievable.
Open bar is important.
Open bar is essential. I do not want beer and wine. That ain't it. I got it. I mean.
Oh, I think that's fine. Just a beer and wine open bar, I think that's fine.
No, I think there's got to be liquor.
I also think that if you are in the wedding, because the amount of money you spend to be in a wedding is significant, right? Whether it's the bachelor party, the bachelorette party, the dress/tuxedo rentals, whatever it might be, the travel, if it's a destination wedding like in California or out of the country. So I think that if you're in a wedding, you should have no obligation to get the couple a gift. None. My gift is the hundreds of dollars I spent to be here. And I'm very happy for you and wish you a lovely life. But I feel I should have no obligation to get you that $20 welcome mat.
You would have been voted out of this specific wedding party right away because he had, Lucas, I'm telling you, all right, this is the most obnoxious human being I have in my life from a financial standpoint. Works in private equity in Los Angeles, okay? He had hotels basically based on the percentage of income tax that you pay or taxes that you pay on your salary. All right, he had it tiered to what hotel you were allowed to stay in if you didn't make enough money to stay in the main hotel where the bridal party and the groomsmen were staying. Because half of the groomsmen didn't stay in the hotel that we were supposed to stay in because the price was exorbitant, we'll say.
Well, shout out to your friend for having a March wedding and not an October or November wedding.
Huge proponent of that.
I've always wanted to, whenever you got to go to a wedding that you don't really know the couple, whether you're there as the plus one or whatever the situation might be. I've only been to a couple of those, but I always have this just inherent desire to be sitting in there and think, I want something to go wrong here. When the priest says, does anyone object? I want somebody to stand up and object. Let's get spicy. Let's make things interesting. If I have no vested interest in the couple, I want to be entertained at this wedding. I've yet to run into that. I've always wanted to be at a wedding where somebody stands up and objects, says, no, I still love you, Clara, or whoever it might be. I've always wanted that.
I was at a wedding like this.
Oh, so jealous.
I don't, without divulging too many details, I was at a wedding for a girl from my high school class, and one of my best friends, still very, very much in love with this girl, who was not getting married to him and did not outright object at the wedding, but caused an absolute scene at the reception.
Oh, no, you got to object at the wedding.
A scene.
No, that's not good enough. Causing a drunken scene at the reception is not good. You have to stand up and say, I object. I object to this marriage. Oh, my face would just light up in the crowd. All right, yes, rub your hands together. Let's do this.
Now, one of the groomsmen did throw up 20 minutes into the reception. Did have to get up in the middle of the best man speech, lower a shoulder, and barrel out into the hallway of the wedding venue to throw up in the bathroom. I went out there to check on him, and I was greeted by the maintenance staff from the hotel. We had the wedding at the same hotel as everybody was staying. The wedding, the reception, all of it at the same hotel. Was greeted by one of the workers out there looking at me, looking at my buddy who had thrown up and clogged he didn't throw up in a toilet, threw up in a sink and clogged it, and was basically greeted with a maintenance person telling me, really, it's 7:30. But it's really 9:30 Central Time, 7:30 Pacific. It was later in the evening for the rest of us. Tough. All right. How Brian Callahan feels about L'Jarius Sneed. We'll talk about the new Titans corner and why the coach had such a big hand to play in the deal for him coming up next.
It is 12:04. Good afternoon. I'm Lucas Panzica from the 104.5 The Zone studios. Some straggling NFL free agency news. The Steelers have signed 33-year-old Cordero Patterson on a 2-year deal worth $6 million. He reunites with Arthur Smith in Pittsburgh. Also, free agent corner Tre'Davious White reportedly will sign a 1-year, $8.5 million deal with the Rams. White was an All-Pro with Buffalo in 2019. In Tennessee football news, Austin Price of VolQuest reported this morning that Tennessee's sophomore running back Cam Seldon will miss the rest of spring practice with a shoulder injury. The Vols will play their spring game on April 13th. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Final hour is here. Show's rolling right along on this Wednesday. It's great to be back from Los Angeles. Glad to have you guys here with us for one more hour. Lucas is back there making it happen. He's been relegated back to that smelly little dark room that we keep him in more often than not. I'm so sorry to do that to you.
How do you know it? It actually smells delightful in here.
That's not true.
You're never back here, so you don't know.
I have set foot in that room 3 times.
Smells like roses and petals.
3 times. Roses and petals.
Or rose petals.
Yes, those are typically the same thing. Although I guess they don't have to be the same thing if it's not rose petals. It's just an odd place for you to take that. I know for sure it doesn't smell like roses or petals back there. I know it smells probably something closer to cigarette smoke and fast food, but that's neither here nor there. You're here to talk some football, one would imagine. I haven't gotten a chance to really get into the L'Jarius Sneed trade. We'll do that here in this final hour. Jimmy Wyatt, who I don't think is still in Orlando, but has been in Orlando for the NFL owners' meetings. He will jump on the show in just a moment. Puka says in the F&M Bank chat, by the way, where you can live stream the show, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, she says she just bought 3 tickets to the live show coming up with Greg Cosell on May the 3rd. Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, if Calvin Ridley was not enough to get you in the door, if the Titans' future 2024 draft class breakdown with Greg Cosell was not enough to get you in there, can I interest you in a deep dive on L'Jarius Sneed? Because we'll be doing a segment just for the Titans free agents, 2 segments for the draft class, and having audience Q&A all night long, which will be great. May the 3rd at the Hutton Hotel, the Analog Room in the Hutton Hotel. Tickets available at 1045thezone.com. I saw the tickets were selling even while I was out on vacation. So you guys continue to buy these things up. Puka just bought 3. It's only $25 to get in the door, and Lucas will do me the courtesy of dropping the Eventbrite link in the chat for you guys if you have not had the opportunity to purchase your tickets yet. There is an open bar. It's like my wedding policy. There is an open bar. Well, I guess it's not an open bar. It's a cash bar. That's very much
so the exact opposite of an open bar.
But if you buy a VIP ticket, you get, I believe, 2 drinks included with your VIP ticket purchase and dinner to be a part of the happy hour with Greg and I for an hour before the show starts. We had a great crowd last year. We're looking forward to having even more of you this year. So 1045thezone.com. Trippin' Titan says, so it's just a bar. That's right. It's just a bar. Yep. But
that is open to customers.
It is physically open
to paying customers.
To paying customers for the duration of the podcast. How many podcasts, though, come with a full bar?
I'm going to tell people that if my wedding does not have an open bar, like, oh, it's an open bar. It's a bar that's very open to customers who want to buy their drinks.
It is open to your purchases. Are you not having an open bar at your wedding? I'm not going to your wedding if there's not an open bar. Okay. Well, just make sure to brief me. I'm available to do a reading at your future wedding if you require.
No need for extra voices at a wedding, right? Like, don't call up your friend to say a few words during the ceremony.
No,
right?
not at the ceremony.
Don't do that.
Oh my God. Well, the rehearsal. This is a great entrance into the Sneed trade. So I was in Los Angeles for my college roommate's wedding this week, and I've got another one in Miami in 2 weeks with another college roommate. I could kill them. This is entirely too much time with these people after going, basically a year and a half at a time apart. Anyway, we're doing the rehearsal, do you want your friends, how many of your friends do you want to speak at your rehearsal? Not that you are planning a wedding anytime soon, but hypothetically, if you were to think, as 9-year-old Lucas is journaling about what his future wedding is going to look like late into the hours of the night, do you want people at your rehearsal to speak? Because that's what my buddy did. Now, I was in the wedding, and he had 3 of us, 3 of the 5. One was the best man, so obviously he speaks after the wedding. And then the other one was the husband of his sister, who apparently was not good enough to speak at the rehearsal. But there was 3 of us that were asked to speak at the rehearsal dinner. L'Jarius Sneed was traded to the Titans 5 minutes before I was set to make my impromptu speech because, in true to form fashion, I did not prepare any notes for my speech. I was just going to get up there and wing it. And so my phone starts to melt down in my hand at dinner. The Titans have traded for L'Jarius Sneed. I'm in the worst possible position to be able to, write something or do something or produce any kind of meaningful content from the wedding because I'm supposed to be on vacation. And, why would I have my laptop at an Italian restaurant on Rodeo Drive for a rehearsal dinner? Why would I? Is that fine-worthy? I thought that was for sure fine-worthy.
I don't know what Rodeo Drive is, so no fine from me. Just sounds like a street.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's, for all intents and purposes, a street. But it's a nicer street. Anyway, so the Sneed trade goes down. It's a 7th-round pick swap this year and a 2025 third. He gets a contract that is as rich as any corner right now on the market. And basically, one of the biggest selling points for the Titans, beyond just needing secondary help, was how much Brian Callahan respects the player. Now, Rand Carthon is ultimately tasked with doing the deal and did so and played it right. Waited it out through a variety of different things, through a variety of different other teams that were interested, offering all manner of different compensation. And Rand Carthon and the Titans slow played this thing over the course of weeks before ultimately being able to land the deal that made the most sense for everybody involved. Were you surprised at all by the compensation? That it was just a 7th-round pick swap this year and a 2025 third?
Yes.
You were surprised?
Yes. I mean, what were we talking about?
We were talking about we were potentially talking about the 38th pick.
Yeah.
Swapped for the Chiefs' 2nd-round pick and Sneed.
And I guess that's just how bad they needed to get him off the books. And I wonder if there was any concern there about a potential holdout because L'Jarius Sneed wanted the long-term contract. Chiefs could have made it work for him to play on the franchise tag this year, but then does that cause complications in training camp where he's holding out for a bigger deal? Or I think the Chiefs wanted L'Jarius Sneed to get paid one way or the other, and it wasn't going to be them.
I was also surprised by the compensation. The thing that made the compensation less surprising is the contract, because we know he wanted to be paid. The value of the deal, I think, is in line with the top players at that position, and you can get sticker shock about it if you want to. But like I said, with the Calvin Ridley deal, you don't have any players on this roster really worth paying. So that you're giving this money to somebody, that's what the money is for. That's what the money's there for.
It hasn't been a very sticker shocky free agency period, has it? Like, has there been a Christian Kirk where you're like, he got what?
No, I mean, Kirk Cousins getting $100 million is pretty surprising at 35 years old, coming off an Achilles. And Blaine's biggest contention with him, if I'm not mischaracterizing, is what the hell has he won?
Yeah.
And the answer is not exactly nothing but one playoff game.
And you're paying him like a quarterback you believe can win you a Super Bowl.
Kirk Cousins is an all-pro when it comes to the negotiation business.
No doubt. I don't know. I feel like the
player,
quarterback is kind of its own category in that as well.
I don't know, but he changed the game for the quarterbacks, Lucas, and that's not easy to do.
No, that's fair. His career earnings is it's quite a number.
So Sneed didn't reset the market. You should consider that a win, that you didn't reset the market at the cornerback position. Now, there are some concerns. The general state of his knees and how much that was managed throughout the course of the Chiefs' season, it's a legitimate concern as I understand it, but the availability was not an issue for him last year, and we can discuss that more as time goes on. We'll see what happens with him in training camp and things like that and what his practice habits are. But for the most part, it felt like fair value for both sides. Kansas City probably looks a little worse in the deal, but not much because they still got a fair amount of compensation and cleared almost $20 million off their books.
The knee with Sneed is like Tyjae Spears kind of for me.
Sure.
Where, like, yeah, keep an eye on it. Could it be concerning? Yeah, but when Tyjae Spears was coming out, well, sure didn't affect his availability or performance in production at Tulane in his last year. With L'Jarius Sneed, it sure didn't affect his availability or performance in production last season. So until it does, I'm not going to get hung up on it.
Now, is there a difference for you in it affecting his practice availability? Because it very much, now, that's fine, but Andy Reid is not somebody who conducts, like, light practices.
Oh, Pat Mahomes is playing full halves of preseason games. Yeah.
Right. So that he had to miss Andy Reid practices may be different than another coach who handles the practice week differently, or the level of strenuousness that's in these practices. Not everybody runs a ship like Andy Reid, so maybe there's something to be accounted for there. It's just something to keep an eye on. It's not he cleared the medical evaluation. That's the most important thing that you need to know. That the knee is something worth monitoring is just that. Something worth monitoring for the time being. All right. Jim Wyatt is going to join us coming up next. We'll also take some of your phone calls. 615-737-1045 is the number. I'm Buck Rising. It's 1045 The Zone. Now, I would never say anything bad about the great Jim Wyatt. At J Wyatt Sports is where you follow him. TennesseeTitans.com is where you can read his mailbag, his multilingual mailbag, which always delights me on a regular basis, except when he tweets out that he's coming on a different show while coming on my show. What the hell, Wyatt?
What are you talking about? Look on Twitter right now. I don't know what you're talking about there, Buck.
Jimmy, we've been through this before, okay? They tell you when people edit the tweets now, all right? So you can't be as slick with this as you used to be.
I feel bad. This is my fault.
What do you mean this is your fault?
This is my fault. I didn't specify. But
it's not Lucas's fault. Yeah, I know what time slot Buck's on. I've got my time because of the hour time change. I think I got my time slots mixed up. So I deleted that tweet and just said I'm hopping on the Buck Rising show on 104.5 The Zone at 12:20 in Nashville to talk Titans.
Wyatt, I don't care if you know what time I'm on. I care. It is Lucas's fault. Lucas didn't tell you which show you were coming
I'm taking
on.
responsibility for this, Jim, because you're getting ready to get a phone call and come in and have a pleasant conversation with Blaine and Mickey, and I can't imagine and fathom your disappointment when you hear Buck's voice bringing it in. So I'm sorry to spring this on you. This is really not okay.
Well, I didn't even know Buck was in town. I thought he was on the road somewhere, maybe going to a bachelor party or a wedding or something like that. He's just got such a busy schedule. I never know when he's going to be on or not.
I'm drying out today, Jimmy. Today is the first day back. So yes, we are here. We're going to make it work. Jim Wyatt at TennesseeTitans.com is where you can read him. What was the biggest thing that you learned from owners' meetings this week?
Well, I mean, the biggest the change is the kickoff rule. I mean, because people are going to see that, and we can talk about it here on the airways, and it's going to be talked about, a lot of broadcasts leading up to the season. But the first time players line up with the new kickoff rule, and it looks nothing like what we've seen before watching NFL games. That was the biggest development through the owners meeting. Obviously, there's some, the tackling technique change, and that's going to impact the NFL this fall and moving forward. You thought it was difficult to officiate maybe the horse collar tackle and how that's signed and how it's called in games now. You've got another rule that's going to draw penalties and get fines and have players upset. So those are two big developments as far as how it's going to affect the game. From a Titans standpoint, I thought Brian Callahan and Rand Carthon and even Burke Nihill talking about Nashville's chances to go to the Super Bowl. It's a very informative couple of days coming out of Orlando, and great surprise to see DeAndre Hopkins down there. I think if all the Titans related issues, just to hear him talk about his excitement and where things are going was pretty eye-opening as well.
Well, he was there on behalf of flag football. He's planning on being a part of the contingent that brings it to here to Tennessee, and of course, the NFL has been promoting flag football in a variety of different leagues
by banning hip drop tackles.
Yeah, that's a good way to start. Excellent joke by Lucas, but that's not what DeAndre Hopkins is there on behalf of. He did talk about a variety of different things, including the coaching change. Jimmy, there's been a lot of, I think, just kind of nervousness from Titans fans all offseason long about Hopkins and maybe his level of happiness or how engaged he's been, given how the first year in Tennessee went and how many different things have changed since his arrival. But that was not the sense. He seems very bought into what they're trying to do under Brian Callahan, was the takeaway that I had from your interactions with him. Yes?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and I'm with you on how he maybe answered questions in the fall, too, because there were two times toward the end of the season. One was in the locker room, I think, the final week of the year, and then there was maybe another one when I asked him after the last game just about things moving forward, and he didn't really give an answer that showed his enthusiasm. And he obviously wants to be on a good team, and he's at the stage of his career where he wants to win a championship and go to the Super Bowl. He said that, when I talked to him earlier this week. I don't think I saw, though, the excitement that he has for the future in the fall during the course of last season that was anything like the guy I talked to. Paul and I talked to him down there in the hallway at the owners' meetings, and just his exuberance and just his body language and his emotions when talking about Brian Callahan and Calvin Ridley and Will Levis and really Rand Carthon. I mean, I think a lot of people felt like DeAndre was tied to Vrabel and Tim Kelly because of his relationship with him in Houston. He was very clear on Monday that one of the big reasons he came here was because of Rand Carthon and him kind of showing him the city and telling him to buy in to this team and to this city for, his post, for life after his career is over with. And so he's excited to be here. He's excited about the changes that have taken place. He's excited about, how this team has developed during the course of this offseason. And, yeah, I agree with you. I saw DeAndre Hopkins. It was as good a place as he's ever been since he's been here in Tennessee.
Jimmy Wyatt is here with us on 104.5 The Zone. At Jay Wyatt Sports is where you can follow him for all your Titans news and updates. TennesseeTitan.com is where you can read him on a regular basis. So you caught up with Rand, and at that time the physical had not yet been cleared as far as L'Jarius Sneed. We're still waiting on the team to officially make that announcement, and everybody can move forward as a result from there. But these are considerable moves, Jimmy, with Sneed, the acquisition of Sneed, with Ridley. They may not have necessarily, it sounds like, headed into the offseason with at least Ridley at the top of their priority list, but have still now put together a pretty high-impact class of free agents for no other reason than this team has so many job openings across both sides of the ball and have immediately added, 4 or 5 starters at this point?
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I mean, I think, they had obviously had some money to spend when this offseason started. Most cap room they've had going in the offseason since I've been around, and identified certain players. And obviously Tony Pollard was one of those guys, and Lloyd Cushenberry was one of those guys, and Cheeto Awuzie was one of those guys. I don't think that Calvin Ridley – I mean, I think that Calvin Ridley was – certainly on their radar. I'm not sure that they felt like they could get him. And so that was interesting to see how that developed. And Rand did talk about that. And they didn't get everything to go the way they wanted to. And I appreciate Rand's honesty on that. He said, we feel great about what we've done, but we wanted to bring back Danico Autry. We wanted to bring back Azeez Al-Shaair. Those guys got deals elsewhere that were in a different financial range than what they were talking about, and those guys decided what was best for them and their families is to make that move. And what the Titans did at that point was to pivot, and they got in on Ridley a little bit more in depth. And Rand canceled his pro day trip to Georgia just because he said he didn't want to get caught out of pocket on a plane when all that was going down. They closed the deal on Ridley, and gave him a contract that made him a Titan, and I think that was certainly a big part of the offseason. But then, as you mentioned, the L'Jarius Sneed trade hasn't been official yet, but that's another huge get. So this team's going to look different based on all those moves, and I think it was really cool to see how they kind of operated during that couple-week period.
Jim, Brian Callahan talked about that too, missing out on a couple guys and then using that word, being able to pivot to Calvin Ridley. So is it fair to connect dots and say that Calvin Ridley maybe is not a Titan if they were able to get deals done with Danico Autry and Azeez Al-Shaair?
I think so. I mean, I really do. I mean, that's when I talked to Rand on Sunday, we were talking about how things played out, and he, talked about how they lost Danico and Azeez, and because of that, they had a little bit more money that they didn't know that they were necessarily going to be able to. And they don't get me wrong, the cap room, the money they have to spend has not dried up completely, but I think they had certain ranges for certain players and had money allocated to certain guys. And when they left, it did free up, some money that they didn't know was going to be available. And Ridley was still there, so they did jump in on him very aggressively at that point. And they had competition. It was interesting. Robert Kraft talked about that at the owners' meetings, just how they wanted Ridley, and they were trying to get to a point because of the state tax difference being here compared to there. They were trying to get to the point with their contract where they were going to make it even. And Kraft was very honest and forthcoming, saying that Ridley's girlfriend wanted to be in the South. He wanted to be in the South, and he liked the quarterback here. So they got themselves in a position to close the deal with him, and I think a lot of that was because they had money that they didn't know they were going to have.
So they've still got money, still got a fair amount of money. Even we'll see what the terms on Sneed and the cap hits specifically are in the days and weeks to come. But they've still got a fair amount of money to spend, Jimmy, and needs all over the place still on defense. The Sneed thing does cushion the blow, but I'm looking at a very, very thin defensive line group right now.
Yeah, I think D-line obviously is one area where you've got to get better. I think inside backer, even though they've got some guys who have played there before, and Kenneth Murray's going to be in the mix there. I think not ruling anything out there. I like, obviously Cheeto and Sneed and McCurry is kind of your top three corners, but I'm curious about safety on back end where you add there. And obviously you need help on offense too, especially at tackle. So still some work to do on both sides of the football, and some of that's going to take place in the draft. 8 picks right now, and then free agency not over. I mean, whether or not you try to add somebody before the draft, so you don't have to worry about it. It happens. I think more likely scenario is you have the draft, you don't get some players at certain positions, then you start plugging holes with 1-year deals with guys that are still out there.
Did you pick up any good dad jokes in Orlando?
I did not pick up any dad jokes in Orlando. It'd been a great place to do it because you got a lot of dads down there taking kids to the parks. But I didn't get a chance to get to the park. There was a lot of work down there.
Oh, a lot of work down there. You had considered a trip to Disney World?
If my kids, I used to go to Disney World. My kids were little, at least once, maybe twice every year, and it's one of my favorite places to go to. I would go back now, but I don't know if I could go sneak over there and go by myself to Disney. I think I'd have to have somebody go with me.
I don't think there would be anything wrong at all with a grown man in his 50s wandering around the Disney parks by himself. I think that would be.
It depends which park.
He's just looking for dad. I'm just looking for dad jokes. That's all I'm here for. Just trying to pick up dad jokes.
Epcot is cool. Magic Kingdom, I don't know.
We can debate at a later date. Jimmy Wyatt at JWyattSports, TennesseeTitans.com. You can hear him on the OTP and all kinds of good stuff on a regular basis. Thank you for the time, buddy. Even if you were on the wrong show.
I was thinking I was on Blaine and Mick, but this has turned out really good on the Buck Rising show. I'm glad we made this happen.
It's just the disrespect. Out of here, Wyatt.
Oh.
Jimmy, at J Wyatt Sports is where you can follow him. That's on you. You did that to him.
Oh, he must have been so disappointed. Damn, I was looking forward to chatting with Blaine and Mickey.
Wyatt is so sick of me after having to spend every Sunday in that booth with me and Rhett on a regular basis for our Titans radio pregame hits. I'm the least professional thing about that broadcast by a mile.
It's insane what we learned from just Jimmy's conversations with Brian Callahan and Rand Carthon, especially Brian Callahan.
Does that feel different to you?
Yeah, it does. We talked about it yesterday. Jackson was just like, new era, huh? It's like, yeah, new era indeed. I mean, could it be more night and day in terms of just the perspective that we're getting and these explanations and laying out what their thought process was and missed on these guys, so we were able to pivot to these guys.
Kevin Clark told me that it was going to be like this.
He did?
Yeah. When they initially made the hire, he said, and I know he came on the radio show and spoke at some length as well, but he had texted me saying, you're going to love this guy. He probably overshares in terms of football, like actual meaningful football things, which maybe isn't oversharing to them, but is just so much more detail than we're used to about how it is that things are going to be done around here moving forward. They have, Vrabel was always the opposite, always from the jump. It never wavered, right? At least he was consistent with that. And what I know about Mike is he doesn't care about how much media people understand about football. You know what I'm saying? Like Mike Vrabel's position always, when anybody would ask for more detail, whether it's publicly or privately, to paraphrase, what do I care if you know more about football than you need to know about football? My job is to coach players and to get coaches in position to succeed. I'm not there to give you a football 101 class. And that's fine. And he can be, that can be his position on things. And I don't know that it benefits Brian Callahan for us to know more about what it is that he's doing. It just feels like an immediately less contentious relationship right out of the gate.
I think it helps. I think it helps with fans that are looking at it saying, what, you couldn't get Danico and Aziz and Calvin Ridley? Where it impacted their plan going in, the money they had allocated for Danico Autry and Aziz Al-Share. I think it helps Titans fans to know that they did intend to keep those guys, but I guess weren't willing to give Danico Autry 2 years, $20 million, and give Aziz, what did he get? 3 years. It was a substantial contract.
It was over $10 million a year.
Yeah. So I do think that helps in the perception of how they're approaching things in the offseason, rather than the hush-hush and
those, rather than answering it with, I'm not here to talk about players that aren't on our team anymore.
Right.
Which is a line I'm intimately familiar with. We'll see, because fans may, enjoy it now when there's no harm right now, right? And then when you get further in the season and they're explaining away all the things that went wrong to you, and you say, I don't care, fire everybody anyway.
Yeah, everything's great now. I mean, you're bringing in good players. Everything is peachy.
Nobody loses in March. 615-737-1045 is the number. Already the end of the show. Last call for phone calls. If you got them, I'm Buck Rising. It's 1045 The Zone. So we ended up, what, 2 Sierra Farrell songs out of the 6? That's what we landed with? Out of the 9? How many segments do we have in this damn radio show?
Moderation is key.
It's a fight that that's a hill I'm willing to die on, is the music for the radio show. I don't know what I have to do other than physically come in on the weekends with Jackson and put together a music library, which I'm not above, by the way.
All right, adding to the list of things Buck hates, Tom Petty.
No, I hate you.
The disrespect for the late Tom Petty.
Is he dead?
Yes.
When did Tom Petty die?
Like in 2017. It was tragic.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, a lot of years of partying caught up to the legend.
Okay. Well, now I feel bad.
Was 66 when he passed October 2017.
That's so young.
Yeah. Yeah, that is one of my top 3 biggest musical regrets, is that I did not ever get the chance to see Tom Petty before he passed.
Okay, who's one that you were, like, that you got off your checklist that you're glad that might be teetering? Like, 66, not old. Like, Bruce Springsteen is damn near 70 out here still crushing it and looks phenomenal. It's very annoying.
Yeah, I saw The Who at Bridgestone, and that was fine. But I've never been big into The Who. But Tom Petty, Pink Floyd, those are 2 that, man, I would do anything to be able to just go back in time and see them in their prime.
I never went to. We've had several Rolling Stones shows here that I have not gone to, and I regret it. I feel like they're going to be
Stones.
They're going to live longer than I am.
No, yeah, Mick Jagger's going to be out there swinging his hips around way after we're gone. He is an anomaly, yes.
So the Vols Pro Day is going on right now, as a matter of fact. It's not on NFL Network. I assume they're trying to push more or less mainstream, even though Tennessee is plenty mainstream. They've broadcast like Alabama and Ohio State's Pro Days on terrestrial television, but it sounds like they're trying to push a lot of stuff to NFL Plus. Anything notable from the Vols Pro Day other than Joe Milton throwing things very, very high in the air and very, very far?
Yeah, not nearly as many high-profile prospects, obviously, at Tennessee's versus Bama and Georgia, especially this year. But Adam Sparks is covering it and doing it well. He has clocked Joe Milton at 4.56. That was his iPhone time. And then he followed it up saying that the unofficial 40 times that they clocked were 4.55 and 4.56. So
not bad.
Shout out to Adam Sparks on the iPhone timer. That's pretty good. McCall Castles with a 10.6 broad jump, which would have tied best among tight ends at the combine, according to Sparks. And his vertical jump, 37.5, would have been third among tight ends at the combine. And I remember being somewhat surprised that McCall Castles did not get an invite to the NFL scouting combine, given how this isn't necessarily a deep tight end class beyond Brock Bowers.
No, he would have definitely been borderline for me.
Yeah, I think he would have made some noise there. I just remember him transferring to Tennessee and Jim Nagy talking about how good of a prospect he was, that NFL scouts are already paying attention to him from his time at UC Davis. So that was slightly surprising.
Go ahead and give Vol Twitter another reason to feel slighted.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think Jalen Wright has ran his 40 yet. I don't know if he will, because he had obviously a good one at the combine. Yeah, so I
wouldn't do anything if I was Jalen Wright.
Yeah, 4.38 at the combine. I don't know that he is going to want to one-up that on his home turf, so to speak. But we'll see. He has not worked out yet.
We talked about Jalen Wright on the install with Greg last week. Greg seems to think that it depends on fit. This running back class is much more dependent on fit than any others. It's not, or than at least last year's, right, with Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs. But he seemed to favor Jalen Wright over basically every other running back, although he loves the Tracy kid out of Purdue.
Interesting. So, yeah, Wright has a shot at being the first running back taken.
Oh, for sure. Depending on the team, for sure.
Yeah.
The athletic traits are 100% there. All right. Well, we can talk more Pro Day results tomorrow. In the meantime, polls.
Oh, Nelly, this is Keith Jackson talking about college football. It's time to stop the count. The polls have closed, and the granddaddy of them all has been tallied with your poll update. Oh, Nelly, talking about Buck Rising show producer and daily correspondent, Lucas Panzica.
Presented by Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer. What's the dumbest thing in sports this week? George says yet another Georgia player getting into trouble for a driving violation. This was Trevor Etienne, the younger brother of Travis, the Florida transfer, with a DUI.
Come on. It's not street racing again with Georgia, but like just vehicle-related incidents over the course of the last 3-4 years. Terrible.
Is the NFL changing for better or for worse? 53% say worse.
53%. I don't know. That's basically any kind of polling that you're going to get back on this. There's old school people who are going to say, "Oh, it's not the football that I grew up watching," and the rest of us just aren't going to care and turn on Red Zone Sunday anyway.
Kyle says more subjective rules that nobody knows how to interpret is always for the worst.
Well, that I agree with.
Who is one NFL player you believe will shine with the new kickoff format? Ooh, Tennessee Dog says Tyreek is about to go crazy.
What about Tajay Spears?
What about Tony Pollard?
Tony Pollard is also an option, as I broke into the noon hour of you reading his return statistics.
Okay, I need to make clear that
I don't care about your context.
We had the bit planned, and I was waiting for you to run me over. I had nothing planned, and you just weren't saying anything. You weren't running me over, so I said, I got to do something here.
I'm
so
sorry.
The
surprise you bit that we had two orchestrated wasn't surprising enough for you?
Not even
or
a little
surprising for you?
What about Cordero Patterson, who at 33 just got a deal with the Steelers, and he has been all but, erased with the way the kickoff has kind of turned out in football, not being a factor. Now it's a factor again, and I can't wait to see what Patterson does.
He's still bigger and faster than you.
Who is one NFL player you believe will shine with I just read it. What is your most controversial wedding opinion? V-Love says, I'm not traveling.
At all.
You want to have your wedding outside of that? I'm not traveling.
At all. He's not leaving Davidson County.
Chip says DJs are always better than bands, which I could not disagree with more.
Strong disagree.
That is a controversial. We asked for controversial opinions. DJ gave us
that is controversial for sure.
Man. TK says there should be a rule. All weddings should be in May when no big sporting events are going on. I also support that.
I agree.
And those are the polls.
Excellent. That's the show. It's fun to be back. Just quickly, because I didn't really know how to work it into the show today, but it was such a huge part of our show a year ago today. I just wanted to pay a little remembrance for the lives that were lost at the Covenant School shooting. That happened while we were live on the air. It's something that's going to live with Lucas and I for the rest of our lives. I can't imagine how it continues to impact the families day in and day out. And I know they're still fighting for a variety of different rights that they are trying to maintain or trying to improve, safety protocols, things of that nature. We're still thinking about you and still thinking about the kids who passed away on that terrible, terrible day. And if there's ever anything that we can do to help and be supportive of those families, you know where to find us. We appreciate you guys hanging out with us. Blaine and Mickey got you next.